Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have Neon Aileron, a bullet light shoot 'em up. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer Saturday Development, Neon Aileron is a self-described retro-styled bullet light shooter. So the basic idea there is that you spend less time dodging and more time shooting, kind of harkening back to the days before bullet hells. And so I kind of think it manages to achieve that goal, but maybe not in the best way possible. It's one that I recommend, but I'd probably also wait to go and see how this title develops. So, right off the bat, we have a couple ways we can play the game. You can play it in single player and two player, but part of why I say this title bears watching is there is further development being done. This title's actually being developed by the developers part-time, so definitely take that into account. There is a story mode that's on the horizon, so that's definitely something to look forward to. Once you select with your player count, you're taken to the pilot select, and here we can choose between the three pilots: Dwayne, Jane, and Dwight. So Dwayne's is probably the most interesting ship, as it has an AI drone that accompanies our ship and fires at the other enemies. The other two ships, the specialty of Jane's ship is it has more powerful secondary weapons, more powerful missiles, and Dwight has more powerful supers. So right off the bat, this is a horizontal scrolling shoot 'em up, where we have our basic shot, and we also have a secondary fire as well. So the secondary is actually one of the parts that makes this game stand out as a little more different than your standard shoot 'em up. It operates off of a charge meter. That happens to be that blue meter there on the top of the screen. As we fire our secondary, that meter depletes, and we won't be able to fire any until the meter charges back up. Different specials use the meter at different rates, so that's important to note. We also have a super attack that charges up with the meter above, and when that's ready, we'll save it for a decent time, we can unleash that. These green crystals that we're collecting on the stage power up that meter as well as giving us additional points. So with this enemy on the screen, let's go ahead and fire that off. So one thing that's neat about the special is it's dependent on which secondary weapon you have equipped. So in the first stage, we only have the one secondary weapon, so there's not a lot of option there which we use. But as you progress through the game, we unlock additional special weapons and can use a much greater variety of special attacks, some of which might be a little bit overpowered, at least playing on easy or normal difficulty. Today we're actually checking out the game on normal. But the specials, some of them really just are too overpowered for the boss. So in addition, in the top there to our super meter and our secondary weapon meter, we also have our damage indicator. So our fighter can take up to 4 hits before it's destroyed, and each hit is represented by a damage indicator on the outline of our hull. And one thing that's really neat, if you actually look at the fighter itself, you'll see that damage reflected on the ship. So let's take another damage on the wing. You can see that one of our wings is now damaged. I really like that attention to detail. Let's just take out this guy faster using our secondary missiles. Yay, repair! So there are 2 different types of power-ups in addition to those crystals that we can pick up. We can pick up wrenches, which will repair 1 point of damage from a part of our ship, and there's also power-ups, which are indicated by the P. So it's possible to level up our main weapon to level 3, and once it hits level 3, those power-ups start powering up our secondary weapon. Each secondary weapon has to be leveled individually, so that's something to keep in mind when you're picking up your power-ups. And they also go up to level 3, making them significantly more powerful than they initially start out. So So the bosses are one of the parts of this game that I do really like. So the bosses are segmented. They have these different body parts that have different health bars. And the red ones are the primary part segments that we have to destroy to defeat the boss. The yellow life bars are optional parts of the boss. If we defeat those ones, it's not required to defeat those parts to defeat the boss, but it does give us additional points. So this boss will just finish up real quickly. And the attacks of the enemy actually change based off of what sections you've destroyed. So the more parts of the boss that we've destroyed, the fewer attacks that it has. And it's a really neat little system. So that's our first stage complete. We also, so here it says critical parts to defeat the boss, critical parts, optional parts to increase score. So we also unlocked the cannon. So we can switch between our missiles, secondary, or we can go to our cannon, secondary. Oh, sorry. I was on the missiles. So the cannon fires this super shell-like shot that does quite a bit of damage. I quite like using it, more so than the missile, although the missile at full strength does have a little bit of a homing effect to it, which can make it quite useful. However, it's not as necessary to have a homing shot when we choose this particular ship, as we do have an AI drone that is targeting the enemies. And really, that's why I like this ship the best, as it's the most unique, having that drone that's targeting the enemies. The other ships feel relatively vanilla and the same as just a more powerful secondary or more powerful special. Just doesn't feel like it sets those ships apart enough. And that's basically what we have for the main systems. So one of the things I do really like is, as I mentioned earlier, is the animation, both of the enemies themselves, which happen to be these bugs. I'm looking forward to actually seeing the story mode to see what kind of story is described there. But also just the way that the damage is represented both on the enemies and ourselves. So our ship is at full damage now. So you can see it's really, really beat up. And if we happen to be destroyed, the pilot ejects another copy, or what's the best way to describe it? Like a backup fighter suddenly comes in and the pilot lands in the new ship. That, I think, is a really, really awesome just bit of animation, and one that I'm not sure I've ever seen in a shoot 'em up before. So it's the first time I saw that, I was just kind of really blown away. It was just one of those things that's like, that's really cool. So there you have it. Neon Aileron served up for your enjoyment. Hopefully they'll add the ability to do an aileron roll as well. But as far as minus abilities or minus flavors rather are concerned, I do feel the game itself is too easy. On my first playthrough, I was able to get a 1cc clear without really even trying on normal difficulty. So for your first playthrough on a shoot 'em up, that seems like it's maybe a tad too easy. And then there is a little bit of simplistic design to the enemies that, not so much the enemies, to the enemy patterns that you see. So the vast majority of the enemies will always spawn on the right side and move to the left of the screen, shooting at your ship in the position. So there's just not a whole lot of variety to that. So there is one or two stages that break that up, but it doesn't feel like it makes things stand out as being unique. There is also a score multiplier system, and that's kind of fun, but I wish there was a little bit more variety to the way that the enemies appeared. Although one thing that I do like, this stage happens to be kind of neat, that we can see enemies starting to show up that are just outlines, and hey, it's glitched out and we're suddenly in this neon dimension. As far as plus flavors are concerned, I really like those boss fights. Having those segmented bosses where you can blow off parts of the boss, restricting their attacks, as well as getting yourself more points, is a really neat idea, and I love seeing it well implemented in a game like this. I also enjoy the pixel art and just those little attentions to detail, like I mentioned, the damage to your ship and when your ship blows up, the pilot ejecting and landing in a new fighter. And also, at this point, I can definitely give it a plus flavor of the promise of additional content coming out in the future. The addition of a story mode could be really neat. There's other features that are described in the Steam description page, which would be neat to see as well. So you can take, there's the promise of being able to turn off the damage system so you would just die in one hit rather than take multiple hits of damage, making it a little bit more hardcore, and the ability to select which levels you're playing, as well as skipping some levels altogether. That isn't in the game at this point, but it's nice to see that there is like some ideas that are currently on the table. So there you have it, Neon Aileron. I'll leave a link to the Steam page in the description below, so if you're interested in the title, I'd encourage you to check it out. Well, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, thank you so much for coming out and joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.